Welcome to Amada Law Office Suites lunchtime version of the technology obligations and cybersecurity. We're going to give 1 minute to let a few more people sign in. We got quite a few people that had signed up for the show, and then we'll kick it off. So just to hang with us for 1 minute. I will add while we're waiting that 1 minute, if you have any questions during Bob's presentation, you can enter them into the chat. I will go through it during the presentation and a few after the presentation. We will try to get our presentation done in 40 minutes. We know you guys are taking lunchtime to do this, so hope you've grabbed a good sandwich, maybe a cup of coffee, and you're ready to understand a little bit more about your obligations and cybersecurity and how dangerous a situation it is with, we don't want people stealing your client's information or your information. So, Bob, how are you today?
Good. It's no longer feeling like Monday, finally. It's been busy.
Good, because it's Thursday.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, we've definitely,
Progress.
across all our industry types for our clients, we've definitely seen a lot more activity in the last few months. So it's good to see people getting back at it.
We're all kind of excited to get back to some normalcy.
Yep.
All right, I think we're ready to go.
All right.
So as a quick introduction, I will kind of go through Bob. We got Bob with Bridgepoint Technologies with us today. I have worked with Bob for quite some time, so a little full disclosure. He actually works with my company's firm, done a great job with what we do, and so kudos to him. I will a little introduction on Bob. He's the Director of Service Delivery for Bridgepoint Technologies. Unique perspective because Bob's been in legal IT for about 30 years, but he's also worked in law firms. So he's actually been a paralegal assistant at Latham & Watkins, as well as an IT director for a national law firm for over 17 years. He's currently serving as a virtual CIO for Bridgepoint's law firm clients, over 150 clients right now. And they work with many of the Amada clients right now. So Bob, welcome to the show. Let's talk a little bit about cybersecurity and what we need to do to protect ourselves.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Yeah, so I've got a number of slides here. I'm going to talk quick and move quick because it is important, but by all means, interrupt. I don't really have a script. You can throw the questions in the chat. Ron said he'll monitor that for me so I can focus on the presentation. If we can get the slide share up. Waiting for there we go. And it looks like I have control of the slides. So number of slides, it's a joke in the bottom left. There are not 234 slides. That's just a ha-ha moment for me. But there are quite a few, and I'm going to go through them quickly. This presentation I've done before. I've done it for a couple of the CBA committees. It usually resonates well because it's not only about protecting you and your company and your clients. It's also for how you take that information home. Protect yourself personally, your kids, neighbors, grandma and grandpa. So the goals today are going to be touching on the ABA rules and what your ethical obligations are. The good news is I did do a search in prepping for this. I always try to keep it current. I still am not finding a lot of lawyers or firms that have been sanctioned on these rules. So that's good news. But of course, people don't publicize that either. But there is that technical risk that you could get sanctioned and embarrassed if you didn't follow these guidelines. I'm going to talk about tips and tricks and how to identify mostly email, but also text messaging now and other ways on how hackers try to get through, and then what you can do to reduce your risk as a person or an entity. So the cyber landscape's changed, not only because technology is changing every day, the hacker sophistication is improving every second with the tools they create and use, but it's also obviously COVID. A lot of people had to pivot. They had to go to the cloud. They weren't there before, or they're working from home, etc. So instead of just this top part on the slide where IT security is focusing on your corporate network, everything's in the internet now by design, right? These three green bubbles: private cloud, Microsoft, Google, wherever your stuff lives, Dropbox, etc. Cloud is great as long as you're in the right cloud for security. Not all cloud is the same. By the way, the way I've dumbed it down is replace cloud with server somewhere else. It is not magical. It's not up in the sky. It's a server in a data center, but where is that data center? But you always have the internet in the middle, and then down below is what just happened, even more of a scale, larger scale, because that home network, it introduces all these other aspects. And the one I put on the bottom here is teenagers. They want what they want yesterday. Some attorneys are the same way, right? They're selling time. They need it now. you're going to hear me say it repeatedly through this: hesitate and evaluate. You can't be in a rush. And then in the middle is this guy, right, the dark web, where these guys sniff everything in between if you're not properly protected. As an example of that, a casino got hacked from a wireless thermometer in an aquarium. They had a centerpiece in their lobby, and for whatever reason, it was wireless, so they could monitor it to make sure they didn't kill the fish. A hacker got a hold of that and was able to leapfrog from that thermometer into the corporate network and steal the big whale information for all the big gamblers. So everything's a risk. So touching on the ABA rules, you've probably heard of some of these. Some of them are older. I go chronologically here. So 2012, they came out with this rule, Comment 8, and it highlights it, including the benefits and risks associated with relevant technology. What that means is you can't just say, "Hi, I use Bob at Bridgepoint," and you're covered. They're stating, there's some people out there expanding on this rule. You need to still understand it beyond that. You can't just hire a third party or go to Microsoft 365 or Google and say, now you're good. They're saying you have to take it a little more beyond that you actually have to understand, like I said, it's in the cloud, but where, and is it backed up, and is it encrypted, things of that nature. Then in 2017, they did this 477R. Highlight there, lawyers must exercise reasonable efforts when using technology. Hand in hand, you can't just dump it to a third-party vendor and say that you're now meeting your ethical obligation. You have to understand how that vendor stores your data. Is it encrypted at rest, in use, and in motion? Then you get to the more current one, which, Ron's doing the great thing by helping you guys keep up, because I know you guys are busy just like me. So that's why we do these informational seminars, to point you to the focus, which is practicing remotely. It's no different, but it's highlighted now because of COVID. You still have an obligation to monitor your associates and paralegals and staff. When you have multiple offices, it was no different, but now virtual offices are working remotely. You still have an obligation to manage what they're doing. And now we do have some clients that we're working with, like, well, how do I monitor them? How can I assist them in their productivity at home? There are some solutions out there for that, but you do have an obligation to still manage them, understand what they're doing. Just because they go virtual doesn't mean you can be hands off. The risks are real. I always try to pull down current stuff so that you don't think I'm just fear mongering. So this one's from February. Jones Day gets hit with the data breach. So that was a big one that hit the major news. And this is where I talk about protecting your brand. You don't want your name to be in these articles. Ransomware attackers are focusing on certain law firms, especially ones that do mergers and acquisitions, IPOs, et cetera, because they want to see information and then they know to be ready to go buy that stock. So it's insider trading, like Martha Stewart, or they're trying to pull down patents or other things that they can go sell or ransom back to this company. And law firms tend to have weaker IT. So like this company, this law firm here, represents very large companies. Well, Ford, Boeing, and Exxon probably have very high-end protection on their IP. The law firm was the weakest link. So somehow they got through a law firm. So that's why law firms are specifically a destination for breaches by some hackers, because they know that they have a wealth of information in that environment.
Hey, Bob, let me stop you real quick and ask a question. A lot of the law firms that I know we're talking to are either solos or partner practice law firms with 12 or fewer attorneys. So are they as targeted as some of these big firms that we see in the news?
Size does matter in terms of the vector, but they don't discriminate. And some of these slides coming up talk to that. So the hackers are by scale. So they do have automatic tools. They just look for if you're familiar with the IP, Internet Protocol, they're looking for a number, and they throw tools at it to see if there's any open doors on that. So if you're a sole practitioner at your house, or you're in a sophisticated law firm with multiple sites, you all have an external facing internet connection. So hackers have tools. They just go out and try to see if there's an open door. They do not care if it's 1 or 100. You still technically have that risk. But the targeted law firms are the ones that advertise that we do IPOs, mergers and acquisitions, patent filings, things like that. Those are the ones that there's a certain side adjunct of hackers that target specific law firms. But everybody technically is a risk. They do not discriminate. As you can see in this slide, Attorney General of Illinois got hacked. They said, well, we're not going to pay the ransom because we have a good backup. Okay, the hacker said, good for you. But before we encrypted all your data, we took information from you. So you're still going to pay us, or we're going to give out sensitive information we pulled off the Attorney General's website. or their data and their servers. This also happened to the Washington, D.C. police force. So they basically said, if you don't pay us, we're gonna release out to the public all the names of your confidential informants and all the names of your sheriffs or whatever. So it's very, very horrible. They have no ethical guidelines, that they're basically putting people's lives at risk by saying they're going to release the confidential informant names to the gangs of Chicago. Horrible, horrible people. So that's the Attorney General. They got hacked. And again, why are they targeted? Because of the large amount of sensitive information you have, right? Even family law, you have financial information because you're negotiating a divorce proceeding. You're doing a real estate transaction. There's all kinds of sensitive information at law firms. That's why they're targeted. And again, I mentioned the damage to your brand. So imagine losing one out of the top 5 revenue generation clients for your firm. Those are hard to replace and could be damaging to a small or medium law firm. Because you do not want your name like the Jones Day. You don't want your law firm name out there because it's going to make it harder for you to get new business and keep the business you have. So that's why we really try to focus on proactive in multiple layers, which you're going to hear about. One other thing I think is very interesting, I came across this a while ago. Technically, if you paid a ransom, so even the Continental Pipeline that we heard about, and the meatpacking industry, all the big ones that hit the news that they can't even really hide it, it becomes public knowledge. By them paying that ransom of millions of dollars, if they can determine that it is going to a certain group of people in Russia, they're violating federal law. Now, the government, again, hopefully isn't going to slap them double time on this for you paid the ransom and now you got to pay a fine to the government. But technically they could because of this law out there about paying terrorists. Again, to the point, they don't discriminate. Here's a nonprofit. This was at the front end of COVID. So this is, or actually towards the last year, September. This one was confirmed. It came through a breach on a home user. They went home. They pivoted. They left the offices. They started working at home, be it the fish tank thermometer, a baby monitor that was on Wi-Fi, one of the Amazon devices, etc. They got into that environment, started stealing information off the work laptop, found out the wire transfer information, took $7.5 million in probably a few minutes. And it's gone. It's untraceable. Interpol, NSA, all the other guys, they basically will say, we can't find it. It's gone. It's all Bitcoin. It's nothing we can do. File an insurance claim, which I'll talk about. Here's an Illinois public health website. You think a hacker would have a conscience at the front end of it. Nope, they don't care. They still took over the Illinois public health provider. Then you get into scale. Facebook had huge amount of data left out. And what really aggravated me, and this screenshot, it's an eye chart, but it's to show you this is what the hackers will show on the dark web. Like, here's the data I have as a sample. I'll sell it to you. I'll sell you 533 million credentials. And Facebook said, we're not even going to tell people. We don't care. We're Facebook. That really irritated me. That was in April. I believe they did back off of that, and then they were going to start alerting users because they were saying, well, it was reported years ago. It's just somebody put it all into one place. So that was pretty upsetting to me that they weren't even going to proactively tell those users. The average cost, you're going to see these numbers all over the place, 200,000, 10 million, et cetera. My simple thing here is you don't want to know. You don't want to find out. Be proactive. Don't allow the breach to happen. Don't allow your brand to get tarnished. Don't worry about whether you got to go report it, et cetera. You got to take some efforts to block it and keep it out. The big one here is at the bottom. 95% are human error. Phishing emails, you probably all heard it. It's an email saying, hi, I'm your CFO. I need gift cards. Please call me on this cell phone number. It's a new cell phone. They do all kinds of tricks. That's still user error. They clicked on a link. They returned a phone call. They gave out sensitive information. They got tricked. That's why things like today, cybersecurity awareness, I call it more than training, will help reduce that, but it's ongoing. You should do this at least annually, depending on your environment. For compliance and regulatory, if you have those higher requirements, then you might have to do it every quarter and test. You can even do testing, and there are solutions out there for that you can show your insurance carrier or clients that we're training our users and monitoring it. The other one that's really important here is the 6 months to detect. So we get the objection all the time. I don't need security because I've never had a problem. I try to educate people to say you've probably had a problem and you're just not aware of it because they're so sophisticated that they can get in and swim around in your environment for 6 months before you even notice it. And usually by the time they get bored and or they've taken all the data they want, that's when you get the ransomware encryption like you've seen in the Hollywood movies, where all the computers at the same time pop up a notice to say you've been hijacked and ransomed, and you have 3 days to pay by Bitcoin. So it's difficult. You got to keep them out, and you got to have multiple layers to do that. Most of you folks on this call are probably attorneys, so you know the statute better than me. I'm not an attorney, and I don't play one on TV, but I've been around them for decades. But why would you want to read this in Illinois to determine what your obligations are? Again, be proactive so you don't have to get to it. The highlight here is that if you have a single breach with more than 500 residents, by law, by statute, you're supposed to tell the Attorney General, who also got hacked. I wonder if he told himself, but you are obligated to tell that to the AG. The thing I say here is now that goes to AG, a government entity, it's foiable. So I could issue a FOIA request to the AG saying, give me a list of all the companies in Illinois that reported a data breach. And technically, they'd probably have to tell me. So it's going to be harder to hide and suppress that you've experienced a breach. Again, why you want to be proactive. So identifying risks. This is going to be the most important part, and then MFA, multi-factor authentication. So by huge percentage, it's still email. Even though they are going to texting. But they also will call your receptionist. Hi, I work for your outside IT company. I need you to provide me remote access to your computer because we're doing upgrades. That happens, and you'd be surprised at the success rate they have. And people start giving them access to their computers for remote access. So it could be a phone call, social engineering. It could be a phishing email. It could be a text message. They change every day how they attack you. And then the third-party data breach is also sometimes you didn't do anything wrong, but Facebook did. They released your information. That's why it's very important not to use what I call a skeleton key password. And I know probably people are going to groan here and shake their head. People probably use Sunflower One for their email, for their bank, for their Amazon account, for Pandora, for all these other accounts. They use the same or a slight variation of that password. Don't do that, because again, if Facebook or LinkedIn has a breach, and the hacker gets your combo, hackers know that, and they have scripts that within milliseconds they can throw that combination of your email and password to all the popular platforms, and they will quickly do what's called an account takeover. So one of the ways, and one of the easiest ways, especially for lazy hackers, is looking at the email address that it came from. There is a friendly name, Bob Fuhrman, but then usually off to the side, it'll say bfuhrman@mybridgepoint.com. So you should train your eye to glance up. Whenever anybody says, I want your social security number, I want your bank, or you owe me money, drift your eyes up and look at the actual email it came from. Because most of the hackers are lazy, and it's going to come from a strange address that's not related to what they're claiming to be. So that's hint number one for how to identify a phishing email. So pay attention to those emails. So like Ron at Ahmad, I did 2 T's, right? That's clearly not it. But actually none of these are real. They're all variations. Hackers do little tricks. They make up one that seems like it's legit, but it's not, because it's very inexpensive, if not free, for them to do that, to make up email addresses. So what you want to look at, like up here, it says it's from Windows Defender, but it says Microsoft subscriptions at Gmail. Well, it's easier for me because I know Microsoft and Gmail are competitors. So why would Microsoft be using a Gmail? Well, they wouldn't, right? This one's easy. It should be. And it's asking for money. And it's giving you a number. And if you go and you Google that number, you're going to see it's a scam. So that one's pretty easy to realize. You need to delete it, ignore it, don't touch it, don't click a link, and God forbid, call them. Then you get to other things like, hey, we just accepted your payment. Thank you. So that's a fairly new trick they've been doing. Like, it's not that you owe me money. It's that I already took your money. And people panic, right? They don't hesitate and evaluate, and they start calling this number. I've fuzzed it out just so nobody calls them. But you can see even in the email, this is all the grammatical errors. They got asterisks here. They got a bad mail merge. You can Google the phone number again to see if it comes up. And you're also like, I didn't buy any PC protection. Well, check your credit card on your own. Don't do any checking through this. Don't click the link. Just hesitate and evaluate when it's ever anything to do directly or indirectly with money. The other one they'll do is you'll get things like this, right? We're busy attorneys. You never want to lose a new client, and you want to be responsive to your clients, so you feel that rush. But it's easy to get distracted. You have somebody standing in your doorway, your phone's ringing, you got a high exclamation email, and you get this, and you're like, oh yeah, I'm working with Chicago Bar Association, so I'm going to click this link. the very first thing they're going to ask you for, it's going to take you to a website and it's going to ask for your password. And it's going to look and feel just like Google or just like Microsoft 365. That's a quick way to get people to do it. Sometimes they'll give you attachments too. So PDF, Word, Excel, those are usually allowed through any kind of email filter because those are very common formats. The problem is they can spread viruses, or they redirect you through the Adobe document, in this case, would have a link to a website. So now my email systems that I have, one of the layers, doesn't see a link in the email, so it allows it to go through because it doesn't think there's anything dangerous here. But if the user gets this attachment and opens it, then that attachment has a link that goes to an infected site in Fredonia or whatever country it's in. So you got to be careful when working with attachments. And because of Bridgepoint and other companies like us that are all security conscious, we introduce multiple layers and we protect email because it's the #1 vector. So hackers now are like, darn it, they're making my job more difficult. So they're now trying to go to text as well. So it's harder to put security on phones, usually because they're BYOD. It's a personally owned device by your secretary or associate. I can't go in and take over that personal device and lock it down because they own it. So they're starting to go to text messaging as well. And again, you can see most of these have links. If I click on the link, then it's going to start siphoning off, information and money from me. When you get threatening things too, because again, the hackers are about distracting you and making you feel anxiety and letting your guard down because they're taking your money or you have something wrong. Well, in this example, it's saying you have an antivirus update, and IT guys like me tell people all the time, you got to stay current, you got to patch, make sure you're up to date on all the critical releases. So you're going to click that. Well, guess what happens once you click here? You get a virus that quick. So they try to distract you. This one's a quick example. I'm going to go through quick. It starts with a text message, seems innocuous. Get a free iPhone 12. Well, who doesn't want a $1,200 phone for free? It redirects you to a website. It asks you to answer some questions. So it's softening it. They're doing the psychology on you. Oh, you want, okay, thanks for answering our marketing questions. Now we're going to give you the free phone. Give us some personal information. Oh, and by the way, it's not free. It's $1. So all of a sudden the $1 pops up. So if they keep going through it, after about 12 or 14 clicks, you get to where they finally are asking for your credit information for that $1. You can see up top, it's like vitaldate.com. It's some made up infected website. Whatever you put in here, within minutes, they're going to start siphoning off money from your credit card. This one is another example. Hey, please change your password. If you made the mistake of clicking that link in an email and it takes you to a website, similar to where I said earlier about drifting your eyes up to the email address, drift your eyes up to what we call the address bar. Again, it shows Google user and Microsoft. They are competitors. There shouldn't, that link should not, it's hard. I'm not going to lie. This is a harder one to see, but you should check that says Google, Microsoft. You're about to get scammed. The lock in the left that this arrow points to does not mean that's a secure site. All that lock means is the hacker did a little effort where he's encrypting the communication between you and the infected website. It does not mean that it's a legitimate website and it's secure to use. It just means that it's got a security socket layer on its certificate, an SSL. So don't let that trick you into being comfortable with it. It's very easy for basic skills to replicate a known website. This is older, so this is probably Bank of America's changed it since then. But I can take a logo, I can take their verbatim form from their website, put it on my own, and try to direct people to it to think it's really Bank of America. This one's over exaggerated, but again, if I drifted my eyes up and I see stealing your data, yeah, that's not Bank of America. So again, you got to hesitate and evaluate as you're moving through. When people's accounts get taken over, they use those accounts to sucker in their friends. So as a Facebook example, if you saw something on your mom's wall, you're going to probably trust it. Hey, you got to look at this. This is really cool. And it's just an innocuous little link. They keep trying to steamroll through all these other accounts. This is one you may have heard of with Twitter, where very famous people, Gates, Bezos, and other, got their accounts hacked because a hacker got to an internal Twitter employee who had admin rights. So through that infection, they leapfrogged and took over the Jeff Bezos' account, changed his password, and then posted, hey, I'm giving out money. And it's so silly. It's like, if the first people that send me $50 million, I'm going to send it back double type of thing. And, I look at it, go, nobody's going to fall for that. But within 24 hours, the hacker got $117,000 from 383 transactions/people. So they got $117,000 for that single incursion into somebody else's account. So just because it says your mom or a client, clients get hacked all the time. Trust me, we see it almost weekly where we're going in to help somebody, get cleaned up. When they get into your account, they're going to email all your clients. And that's, again, where your brand is going to get hurt and your clients are going to get hurt because it's going to look like it's from you. And the other, I mentioned earlier, the account takeover, they can go through real quick. All this stuff can happen within pretty much 3.5 seconds anymore. Where they'll get in, change your Gmail password. Then they know Gmail's used for resetting passwords at the bank. So they'll go to your bank and say, forgot password. And then they watch your inbox at Gmail to get the bank email. It says, click here to reset your password. They know how it works and they're very good at it. All these logos, you probably recognize some or all of them. You probably use some or all of them. If you have, you're at risk. These major companies have all had a significant data breach in the last few years, if not months. So, for example, Evite, we all get it, right? Hey, anniversary party or a shower or something, baby birthday. If you go to Evite and you use that skeleton key password again, the hacker now probably has that. So that's why you have to use unique passwords and you have to change them at the hint of a breach from them or on your own gut instinct. Go change your passwords and make sure they're unique.
Hey, Bob, real quick on that. Are you recommending third-party password protecting companies?
Yeah, I absolutely do because I know it's frustrating for people to use different passwords, so they won't do it. So to get around that objection, I absolutely recommend using something like a Passportal, LastPass. There are services out there where you can even do, for a corporation, you can do managed passwords for your employees. And then when an employee were to depart, we could go in and say, pull back all their passwords that they know and change it or disable. But even on the individual level, if you do LastPass, they have plugins and it's free for one device. So usually your laptop or desktop, but you could also technically do it on your phone, but now they're charging if you have a second. LastPass gives you a plugin to Chrome, Firefox, Internet Explorer, Edge, whatever your browser is. LastPass plugs into your browser. So when I go to Amazon the first time, type in my credentials, it'll see that and LastPass will pop up and say, do you want me to save this password? Yes. Going forward, I don't even know what my password is anymore. I can feed it. I can push my password from LastPass plugin to that website. Makes it very easy. I have passwords on some sites that are just me slapping at the keys randomly because I do not care what my password is because LastPass is taking care of it for me. And no hacker is ever going to brute force me randomly slapping at my keys for 32 characters. The downside is you got to make sure that master password you put on your vault, your password vault, no matter what platform you use, they're always going to have a password that gets you into all your passwords. Make sure that's unique and make sure you don't lose it.
So I don't want to take too much of your time, but you mentioned managed passwords. If I'm a 5-attorney law firm, I got 3 staff people, I go to fire someone who has sensitive information. You can have managed passwords so I can immediately change their passwords.
Yep.
And I won't have to worry about them.
Yeah. So if they have LexisNexis access or your Clio login, your Dropbox 365, there's ways we can go in and use that managed password vault for that type of activity. Absolutely. And I always say, law firms, all the law firms are very good at onboarding clients and employees. They tend to suck at offboarding clients and employees. Where do the documents go? Am I a warehouse? I got all these litigation files sitting here back in the day with it's paper. So you got to have an offboarding process, and that's one of them. Disabling web portal access for your employees. Do they have a credit card? Terminate it. Do they have a building pass? Deactivate it and get it back. Do they have a company issued cell phone, etc.? You should have an offboarding checklist. Absolutely. Because you get busy, right? And it's usually an emotional moment, and there's stress, and you got to pack their desk. Do not forget to cripple their access because, unfortunately, disgruntled employees can do a lot of damage. So that's where managed passwords would help in that. Equifax is another big one I mentioned. It's older, but it was huge. Another 325 million. And Equifax, guess what they have? Your life. So they gave away social security numbers, address, phone numbers. It was insane how big that one is. And the dark web, for those of you who aren't familiar, it's the underbelly of the internet. You got to have special software. It's still free, but you have to have different software. You can't just get to it with Firefox or Chrome. You got to have a special Tor browser or Onion browser. This is a website from a dark web, and it looks like you would see in any, online merchant. They offer, it's hard to see, but they offer contact seller for support, and they have a refund policy. It's illegal as you can get. In this particular example, is they're selling RDP, remote desktop platform, which some people still use, but you got to be very careful using RDP. They said, I've gathered all the data, but that's where I draw the line as a hacker. I don't want to go any further, so I'll sell it to any other hacker that wants to try to go intrude into these systems. They sell like just buckets of data. But it's a professional business, but it's illegal. And it's shocking to me that they're not shut down, but it's hard for anybody to find them. Big one was IDES, Illinois Department of Employment. I actually was informed that I got fired by my company, which I obviously wasn't. But I got somebody tried to scam me on unemployment insurance, and I had to quickly shut it down. Thankfully, it didn't go any farther than that. But somebody knew enough of my information from the website, from looking at my LinkedIn. You got to be very careful what you put out on public-facing information. So attorneys always want their bio out there and stuff, but now if you start talking about where you went to college, what your kids' names are, what your favorite sports team is, hackers know you're using that for your passwords as well, and that reduces the brute force attack. So reducing your risk, dark web, you got to monitor whether you're on the web. Bridgepoint has a service where we have a partner of ours, all they do is look at the dark web. So they're white hat hackers out there looking to see if my information's available. I get an alert, and then we notify our clients. Cybersecurity insurance isn't about reducing the risk as much as reducing the risk of your company not being in business anymore because of a data breach. COVID, I know my friends that were insurance defense firms, they're busy as they could be right now because of all the lawsuits over insurance, and is it business disruption, is COVID covered, et cetera. Same thing for insurance. Insurance has been paying out millions and billions of dollars from Bitcoin for ransomware. So now they're changing it. They're making you get a cybersecurity policy. They've rewritten the policy so business insurance now carves out data breaches and cybersecurity. That's not a business disruption for most. So have conversations with your broker, your carrier, and ask them, give them, what ifs. If I had this data breach and I got to inform the Attorney General of Illinois, do I get reimbursed for that time and damage, et cetera? Or if you lost a client, would you get that money back? Probably not. So it's important. This just came out, yesterday, that somebody was talking about it for law firms, that your business client and your firm should both be talking about cybersecurity and understanding what you can get if you were, unfortunately, to have an event. If you want to scribble down this, or you'll get it afterwards, you'll probably get a copy of the slides from Amada Crew. This website you can go to and type in your personal or work email and then click this owned button. It's spelled with a P, but it's owned. And it will tell you if that email is on the dark web. So it will scare you. I did D-Trump as just a ha-ha, and somebody actually has that email, and it's telling me it was found in 22 breach sites. And this is probably a year or two old. So it's a good website, but I'm telling you right now, you're going to probably scare yourself when you type it in, because more than likely you've been in a breach. What you should do, change your passwords if you haven't already. Multi-factor, dual-factor, secondary all go by the same name, and that's because it's the same process, but companies brand it differently. Simply means, and most of you probably do it with your bank or a wire transfer or something else, if I have my email address, my password, I still can't get in unless I put in a time-sensitive code from my mobile device. And it's good for 15 to 30 seconds. So the hacker, even if they get my email, my password, and they're over in Fredonia trying to log into my email, they're stopped in their tracks because it will pop up and say, please enter the code from your device. And it's going to be very difficult for them to get in within 15 seconds before that code expires. It also tells me if I get a text message to my phone or my app that says, here's your code, and I went, I didn't request the code, I know somebody got my password somehow. So then I have to go and change my passwords. So strongly recommend, even for our clients going forward, we're close to mandatory, or we won't even take your business if you're not using MFA on your email and your remote access, because our insurance carrier is starting to get close to demanding it. Or otherwise they won't insure us. So it's that big of a successful block for hackers. Nothing's perfect, but it's a very important layer. And by the way, Amazon supports it, personal Gmail supports it, all for free. It's just a matter of going through and setting it up. And it's not intrusive. You're not having to look at your phone every email. You can even set it for every 90 days if you want. Highly recommend you do this. If you want to reach out to us, you'll get my contact information here at the end. I have little cheat sheets on how to do it for the popular platforms, Twitter, Amazon. I don't have Facebook because I'm a tech guy. I stay off Facebook, but I can give you cheat sheets on how to do that. But highly recommended for MFA. End user training is very important, as you saw. Most of the things come from an employee. Whoopsie, they clicked on something. So this company, NoB4.com, is a security company. I think they're doing the right thing. They're providing for free training for your home. Well, a network's a network, internet's the internet, email's the email. So all this stuff translates to corporate too. So if you go to that website, you will be asked for a password. The password is simply home course, all one word, lowercase. That gets you logged in. It's 24 hours a day. It's a website. It's got cool little simple videos. It's really a simplified security training. I recommend you make your teenagers take it, especially before they're allowed to use your computer. And don't share company devices with family. Please just don't do it. Because again, they're not security conscious. They are a danger. But this is something that I think is pretty nice that you can be able to take. And again, as I've said, layers, right? So as much as it is to hesitate and evaluate, you have to have the multiple layers because there's no silver bullet. There really isn't. They're getting closer with zero trust, which I'm going to talk about. But you have to have updates and patching. If you have Windows 7 as your operating system, now that you know this, you are ethically not meeting your obligations under the ABA rules. Windows 7 has ceased for support as of over a year and a half ago now. You cannot be using Windows 7. You immediately need to get that off. Get your data off it, upgrade to Windows 10 Pro or whatever operating system, but it's got to be Windows 10 Pro is what we recommend. You have to get off Windows 7. Same with servers. If you have an old server in your law firm, Windows Server 2008, also no longer supported. It hasn't been for a year and a half. You have to get off of those. They have to be upgraded or replaced as soon as possible because there's known holes and Microsoft isn't patching them anymore. So once a hacker finds a new hole in that OS, it's never going to be closed. So they can walk right into your server as long as it's internet facing. Another layer, endpoint security. If you're older like me, you call it antivirus, but it's more than that now. It's got AI, artificial intelligence, looks for behavior. You want that on every machine, and that needs to be patched and updated because they're constantly upgrading it. You've heard of Norton and McAfee, but there are other solutions out there as well. Make sure those are patched. Email, again, number one, so you want to protect that with spam filtering. Google and Microsoft do some spam filtering. We recommend another layer on top of that, so it's like a double car wash. So it gets filtered once, then it goes to your destination, be it Microsoft or Google, and it reduces the junk. And the other thing with that is even the junk emails that hit your employee inbox, so you get the labor back. So they're not reading 100 emails or just deleting them. You keep all that noise out of their inbox, so they're focused on work. Encryption, this one's a little difficult depending on your scenario, but there's encryption at rest and motion and use. But it's something that I think you need to understand. Where you store it in the cloud, is it encrypted? If your cloud provider was to get a subpoena related to one of your clients somehow, what happens? You need to understand how the data is stored. On-site and off-site backups are critical. So like the Continental Pipeline, the meat manufacturer, the Illinois Attorney General, and all these other people, if you have a good backup, that will save you from having to pay the ransomware, but it may not stop you from that secondary threat of, but I still took sensitive information. But you want to make sure you have both on-site and off-site backup. End-user training is huge. Zero trust is basically like spam and whitelist, blacklist. Zero trust is an emerging. It's been out for a number of years, but it's getting so much more powerful. It basically says Word can only work with Word documents. Word cannot run a macro that goes out to the internet or a PowerShell. So zero trust is a very, very strong solution. So if you've been infected, speed is of the essence because you've heard me say they move very quickly. So you want to disconnect that device so that you don't infect other devices in your company or your home, and also to limit what they can do and take. So as soon as you think you're infected, how do you know? Weird pop-ups, latency, programs seem to be opening and closing on their own. You see strange emails in your outbox that you never sent, right? Because they use your email sometimes to send out emails. So you'll get, just if you get that spider sense and you're tingling a little bit, just disconnect, turn off Wi-Fi and unplug the internet cable if you have one, cable. And when you go to reset passwords, don't use the device that you think's infected to reset the password because hackers can watch everything you do if they're in your system. So they're just going to see your new password. So you have to go to a different device to change your passwords. And a lot of monitoring. Just watch, if you're not already, watch your credit card statements and everything else. So the big summary is educate staff, right? If you do things like today, cybersecurity training and awareness, you can reduce that risk. Hesitate and evaluate. Look up at the email address. Look up at the address bar. patch, update. Windows, start settings, Windows update, check for updates. It's that easy. Let it do its thing and reboot. MFA on any account that supports it, which anymore is pretty much every account. If you use VPN for remote access as you pivoted from COVID to work from home, and you got VPN back to your office, be it at Amada or elsewhere, to get into a server that's still sitting in your office, make sure you have multi-factor in your VPN as well. Backup, as we said, very important, both on-site and off-site. Fire, water, theft. If they steal your stuff, you got to have it out in the cloud as well. Make sure it's unique passwords and change default passwords whenever you buy a smart device at your home, like a Nest thermostat or anything else. Change the default passwords. And the big one, hesitate and evaluate. You don't be in a hurry. They're trying to distract you and play to your emotion and fear. Do not be in a hurry. Just take your time before anytime they're asking for money or sensitive information. And I know 7 is the same as 1, but it's that important. You got to train people. You got to educate them on how hackers are currently operating and how to be careful in proceeding on clicking links.
Okay, Bob, couple questions. I only got a couple minutes, so we're going to move through these quick. If
Yep.
I'm on Microsoft 365, am I auto-encrypted when I'm sending and receiving emails?
There's always a baseline. It's called TLS, so it's a yes, but no. It probably wouldn't cover you for HIPAA and other things, but there are solutions you can layer on top of that for true encryption. There are solutions available for that, which we can assist with. You do have some level of encryption, so generally you're taking reasonable accommodations to protect you and your client's data. That would pass muster unless you get into HIPAA and other regulatory type data.
Most of us use SharePoint, Box, and Dropbox. Are they all secure?
The big ones are going to be secure, but not perfect. That's where MFA really helps you. So they all support that multi-factor, whatever they call it. If you turn that on the big players like those that you listed, you're absolutely going to pass muster. Just still make sure sometimes you want to back up from cloud to cloud. There are options out there, but the big ones, yes, as long as you turn on MFA.
So do us non-tech people, do we need to engage our tech company to turn on multi-factor with these things?
If you don't know what you're doing, yes, there are some settings that have to be turned on. Microsoft, I believe, now enables it by default, but you still have to enforce it. So yes, absolutely drag in us or your IT people to get that guidance to turn it on. And then once it's on, and everything's happy. But yeah, you do need to, some of those platforms, you do need to enable it and configure it.
And you mentioned VPN. Most of us work off of VPN. Multi-factor authentication on VPNs, is that like another software you got to introduce? How do you do that?
Yeah, it depends on the hardware/software. So if you have like a Dell Sonic Wall, and it's no longer Dell, but a Sonic Wall or a firewall or security appliance, it's contingent on that point of entry. So it's usually a firewall. So if you VPN to this firewall, does that support MFA? If not, then you either replace the security appliance with something that does, or you can throw on another third-party layer like Duo. But again, it's all contingent on that. So that would be potentially a small project that would have to occur to get that protected.
So I tell you, Bob, this has been a wealth of knowledge. I appreciate you coming on. I've actually taken some notes, and if any of our listeners have ideas of other presentations that they would like to see, please let me know. Shoot me a message at ronb@amadaoffices.com. A couple things I thought, Bob, a webinar could be on dark web and managing firm passwords, maybe tied in with employee offboarding. What do we need to do and when do we do it?
Sure.
Cybersecurity, how does it work and what's covered? That maybe we tie it with yourself with maybe one of our insurance partners. Yep. And then encryption, just understanding what encryption, what's it mean? And if, those are my ideas. Let's talk. We'll set up some new webinars so we can continue this education so people understand where they're at and what they're doing. I do got another question. Yes, Jonathan, you will get the slides. We'll be sending those out here after the presentation. So Bob, thanks for joining us. Everyone, you're going to get Bob's slides. You're going to get his contact information. Reach out to him at bfuhrman, Fuhrman at mybridgepoint.com. Great guy to work with, obviously very knowledgeable and understands the legal industry. Bob, thanks for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
No problem. And for those of you that are interested, Bridgepoint is more than happy to provide you a complimentary law firm IT survey. So reach out to us and we'll send you a link where you can go in and fill out the basic information. We'll follow up and provide you with a quick review of the MFA and what you have if you're interested. All
right. Thanks for joining us for your lunch, everyone. Have a great rest of your day and stay cool. It's hot out there.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.